Hey, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we will continue with our Wish Machine build series. As your server moves into Phase 4, the Wish Machine will unlock the ability to gamble for the KVD Boom as well as the Hardy Gloves. These are both used to create the LMG Burn Build. However, we won't be using the gloves, but we will use the other items that accompany those on the Wish Machine, so I'll go over all of that as we get into the details. There's also a website that one of our community members shared with me where you can post builds, so I'll be adding our future builds there as we create them. I'll go over the website and where you can find the builds at the end of the video. Since these builds are geared towards the new servers, we'll start off by discussing the current super anomalies for normal and hard mode. There are two server types, Void and Balance, which has been renamed to Regen. Those mobs have a shield that will only take damage from certain damage types. For Regen, you can remove it with burn damage, and Void, the shield can be removed with the Rifle Override. For the Phase and Coherent servers, we don't have any countermeasures in this build, so you'll need to rely on others to take down the shield before you can do any damage. The good news is that the devs have heard the feedback, and moving forward, all servers will have the same super anomalies, which probably means that we'll be able to create a build to destroy the shield in the future and not have one server where we're unable to fight them. Now, let's get into the build. I'll start off by saying that this build does decent damage, but it's not an S tier build. If you get all the right stuff, I'd imagine you can make it an A tier or a high B tier build. We did get some feedback a few weeks ago that the devs do plan on reworking the Cradle Overrides to make more builds viable, so we should assume that this is one of those builds that'll get better over time instead of the others that may get nerfed. So essentially it's a safe build to start gathering gear for, and the main armor is used in multiple builds, so that's going to be a nice bonus too. The main item in the build is the KVD Boom light machine gun. This you can get on the Wish Machine when your server hits Phase 4. Now, it is always recommended to gamble for the item you're looking to get as long as it's the main prize. This means that for 10k, which is just 2k more than buying it outright, you'll get enough fragments to upgrade it to Tier 2 along with everything else that you win. This gun has an 18% chance to apply burn on hit, which will tick every half second for 6 seconds. Killing an enemy with burn will also trigger an AoE explosion for an additional 300% PSI intensity. The explosion will also spread one stack of burn to whatever it hits, and the blaze damage is going to be increased by 30%. Now, burn is considered continuous damage, so anytime you see something that benefits from continuous damage, it's going to affect this build. Burn deals 10% PSI intensity as status damage every half second for 6 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. The additional damage is Blaze element, which cannot crit, cannot strike weak spots, and will not decay with distance. That means that status damage is going to be our main damage priority, with Blaze elemental damage as our secondary priority. For the calibration on this, we're going to want to run Rapid Shot for the 10% fire rate, and then another 10% fire rate after continuous fire. And then we'll want to pair this with 2 elemental damage buffs. For the mod, we're going to be running Flame Resonance, which will increase our stacks by 2, bringing us up to 7 stacks of fire damage at the cost of negative 20% duration. For the key item for this build, we're going to be running the BBQ Gloves instead of the Hardy Gloves from the Wish Machine. This increases the burn damage frequency with the number of stacks up to 100%, versus the Hardy Gloves, which cause an explosion when the target reaches max stats. Now, I've tested both, and the barbecue gloves were leagues better than the Hardy Gloves. However, we'll still want to use the Wish Machine to gamble for them, because that game includes 3 pieces of the shelter set, which we'll be using for this build. Now, if you already have the shelter set, it will still be worth rolling because you'll be able to get shelter fragments, which can be used to upgrade those items. For the BBQ gloves, we're going to want to use the status enhancement mod, which can be found in Silo Sigma. Next, we'll be using 3 pieces of the shelter set. These will be the 3 obtained from the Wish Machine, but feel free to use whichever ones that you have. This set will give us 15% status reduction, 8% elemental damage, and each weapon hit will grant 1 stack of Deviant Energy, which in turn is going to give you 1% elemental damage, stacking up to 20, and then dropping it in half whenever we reload. The last 2 items that we're going to use in this set are going to be the Heavy Duty set, which is going to give us 10% to max health and another 8% status damage. Alternatively, you can also use 2 pieces of the Savior set, which will give you 10% weapon and status damage when you're above 70% health. This is overall more damage, but it will require you to stay healthy. It's also legendary, so it's going to cost you 6,000 in Starcrom versus the heavy set, which you get for free. For the mods on the Helm, we're going to use Elemental Havoc for 10% elemental damage and another 10% when our hit points is over 90%. For the mask, we're going to use Blaze Amplifier, which gives us 3% PSI intensity damage for every stack of burn. For the top, I'm using Life Force Boost because it has the best stats for me. Rejuvenating is one of my favorites because you'll get healed up every time you kill a mob, but ultimately you're going to want to just take whatever you have the best stats in for the chest. For the pants, I'm running Bullet Siphon, which will increase our weapon damage every 5 bullets, capping at 20%. I did some testing, and with the drum being as big as it is on the LMG, I believe this is going to be our best overall damage output. For the boots, we're going to run Slow and Steady, which gives us another 10% status damage and an additional 10% more status damage if our health is over 90%. For the secondary, you can use the AWS Bingo for the weak spot vulnerability or the KVD rifle with the Cradle Override to take out Void. Since the rifle is also burn damage, you'll be able to take full advantage of the build against that super anomaly. For the Cradle Override, we're going to take Automatic Weapon Enhancement, which is going to give us a plus 20% damage when holding LMGs. We're going to take Tactical Combo, which gives us an additional 25% weapon damage for 4 seconds when we switch weapons. So if we start off for the vulnerability and hit them with the bingo and then swap over, we'll get that extra 25% weapon damage for the first part of the clip. Master Tactician. So after using a tactical item, our damage on great ones is going to be increased by 25% for 15 seconds. So whenever we go in to fight like a great one, what I like to do is hit them with the vulnerability, toss the grenade or whatever you have that's a tactical item, and then pull out your Pyro Dino, which we'll talk about, and then finally just go in on them with your weapon. Next, I'm running Advantage Barrier. However, you can run the Cradle Override for the super anomalies, or you can basically do anything you want here. This just gives me some extra defense. I'm then running Status Enhancement, so this is going to give us an additional 25% status damage after we hit a weak spot for 3 seconds. Then I'm running Deviation Master, which is going to increase damage on great ones and elites by 25% whenever we have our deviation out. Next, I'm running Sustained Suppression, which defeating an enemy with continuous damage, such as burn, is going to increase our continuous damage, which will be our burn damage, by 20% for 10 seconds, stackable up to 3 times. So this is really big, an additional basically 60% extra damage. And then finally, for the last one, I'm running Lone Walker, which is for solo fighting. You can use whatever you want in this particular slot. For our deviation, we're going to want to use the Pyro Dino. When you have the Dino out, it's going to increase your burn damage on the target by over 20%, depending on what level you get. So it's a great one for this build, and it can be tamed from the Silo Phi. So it's where you would go to get your Chephosaurus. There's also a chance that it can drop the Pyro Dino. So that covers the build. Now let me tell you about this website where I'll be hosting all of my future builds. So this here is essentially the MetaBuilds website, and this is a spot where you can go in and you can search builds. It has a build planner, so you can go through and you can create your own builds if you want. I'll be uploading all of our future builds here just because I think it's a great resource, and it allows me to basically put everything there instead of using the spreadsheets, which I've been doing. So here, if you click search builds and you start typing in Troy, you'll see that my builds will begin to come up. So the first build that I have in here is this Burn Build KVD that we just talked about. So if I click on here, it's going to then take me into the build. So here you'll see the item, you'll see all of the mods that are associated with it, as well as any calibrations. So I've just, put this together for the one that we're doing here. You'll also see the Cradle Overrides, the recommended deviation, and then down below we have all of the different items, along with all of the different mods for each one of the items. Down here you can see there's a stat priority over on the side. You can see what the different bonuses that you're getting from the set bonuses. And then below, it'll show you information on how the build works. So these are all your different weapon bonuses. And then down below, it'll give you the actual mod list along with what each of the mods does. And then it'll also show you where you can get it. So for instance, the Flame Resonance you can get from the Weapon Crate, Shadowhound, Ravenous Hunter, Forsaken Giant, or the Leia Labs. So this will be a great resource. It will also include the YouTube video. So once I add the YouTube video, it'll show up here where the description is. So you'll be able to come in here and basically find any one of the builds that we talk about, and then go ahead and view the video if you'd like. But you'll have access to basically everything that you see here. So as we go to the home page, you can see this website is actually really awesome. It shows your loot crate resets, it's got your vendor reset, weekly resets, all your timers are there. I don't know what this Trade Center fresh deals are, but that's pretty cool. And then we've got Codex if you need to look what anything is. It also has different timers for events, so you can see all the patch notes and different things like that. So great website, and I look forward to using it a lot for my builds in the future. So that covers the build, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Let me know in the comments if you think I should try something different. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get more Once Human content every time I upload. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.